Welcome to Capture the World with Dee. Interviews with companies and individuals to learn more about digitally capturing the built world. Video, drone, 3D tours, pictures, panoramas, and more. And now your host, a social influencer and community activist, Dee Johnson.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Capture the World with Dee. I'm your host, Dee Johnson. I hope you all had a great 4th of July weekend, and now you're back and ready to get back into work. So we have a very special guest today. She is the CEO and chief photographer at Hopscotch International, a real estate media agency in the San Francisco Bay Area. She's a longtime XR for real estate evangelist and was an early adopter of 3D scanning for real estate using Matterport. She co-founded Spatial First, an augmented reality app for exploring commercial spaces in XR, and she's a member of the Commercial Real Estate Professionals Network for Entertainment, hosted by Europark in Rust, Germany. She has a ton of experience, and she is going to talk to us today about how to start and successfully run a real estate photography and virtual tour business. She's up and coming. She's destined to become famous. I know it. She's wonderful. Anyway, without further ado, please help me welcome Emily Olman. Hi, Emily. How are you today?
Hi, Dee. How are you? It's great to see you and to see everybody. And yeah, great to be back after the holiday weekend.
Yep. So we're all back. We're all rested. We're ready to go.
Exactly.
All right. So we've got a lot of people out there who are wondering how to start real estate photography and virtual tour business. So why don't we start out by having you give us a little bit about your background so everybody knows sort of where you're coming from and why it is you're so knowledgeable on this topic.
Thank you. So I run Hopscotch Interactive in the East Bay in California, and I am a real estate photographer and virtual tour expert. And I also have deep knowledge, as you mentioned, in extended reality, which is virtual reality and augmented reality. And how it all started was with my working with a startup in the East Bay with some friends of mine, and this was over 5 years ago when we were using and testing all different kinds of 360 and 3D technology such as Matterport. And so I was a very early adopter of Matterport. And I just really loved the Matterport platform. And this was in we started talking about founding the company in 2014. We founded the company in 2014. And then 2015 is when we started the company. It was called Butter Home Services. And so I got my hands on Matterport. I loved it. And later I used a Matterport camera to sell my mother-in-law's house, to help sell a property of hers. Mm-hmm. So I had no photography background at all, no photography experience, but I do have a background in business and a background in sales. So I want to just make sure that I get those things out there first, because it's sort of important as we talk about the foundational skills you need to run a business. So we are 6 employees in the East Bay, a photographer, media editor, videographer, coordinations and booking specialist, and multiple photographers. And then we have a number of other photographers that work for us as the needs arise, whether that's in Portland or in Fresno. And I've sort of built up a very large network of people that have a very specific skill set. Mm-hmm. So
cool. Yeah. So that's good to know that you don't need photography experience to become a photographer in this field.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that surprises people. So actually, I got into this business a little bit of the reverse way. So I post videos also, and I talk about some of the sort of technical skills and technical details about things like Matterport and iGuide. And I always get somebody in the comments who is like, hey, I'm just starting out. like, what do I choose? Which one do I do? How do I do this? And so that was sort of the thing that got my wheels turning to, you know, talk to you and just have a really casual conversation with people or for people about how do you start this and how do I do this? And can I make money on this? And can this be my full-time job? And like, those are the things that I get asked all the time. So I wanted to sort of talk through that with you.
Okay. So that's good. So you don't need any experience. And you can be successful, and I know plenty of people who have been. All right, so start us out. I'm looking into this. I have no experience. Where do I start?
So I think the first place to start is to think about, you know, where are you at in your life and what do you want to do? Do you want to run a small business? Like, let's not even think about photography for a second, but let's think about, you know, the number one advice I have for people is to think about, what do you want your lifestyle to be? Because the lifestyle of a real estate photographer has a lot of seasonality to it. It requires investing in gear eventually. You know, you can start with an iPhone. You can start with learning the software like Lightroom, or maybe you already know Adobe Photoshop. So I think, okay, so let me back up. The first thing to do is really just to take an inventory of your skill set. Like, do you have any interest in photography, first of all? Do you have an interest in trying to break into a market that may already have people in it, in your territory, in your region? Do you want to have the flexibility to be your own boss? But do you also have the motivation to be your own boss? Right? Yeah. And where are you going to come up with the funds and also to create that network if you need to invest in gear? So what I did is, because I had a credit card with, like, I don't know, maybe at the time it was like, say it was a $10,000 or $20,000 limit. So I had a good credit card, good line of credit. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to do the business. And back then, Dee, it cost me $4,500 to buy my first Matterport camera, right? And that camera was expensive. It was a big investment. But I also thought, you know, well, I can always sell it, right? If I don't end up using it, or if it doesn't end up working out. But so I would say that, you know, back in the day, that the startup costs were running about $10,000, because, you know, I had to put that onto a credit card, but it was a good way for me to sort of get the things that I needed. So a Matterport camera, an iPad was, you know, the best iPad you could get at the time to just do the Matterport thing. But things have changed, right? And now I think you can get into this business with a lot less money. So you can do on an iPhone with LiDAR now what we had to pay $4,500 for. So even just an iPhone camera or an iPhone and the Matterport software, that can get you started. And so you don't need to invest as much. Like, I think you could probably start, you know, you could start getting familiar with the software and the technology for a very low amount of money.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then, you know, I think that the biggest thing is, like, as I mentioned before, is, do you want to run a business? Because some people, I think, expect that, you know, like, they're shocked that they build a website, they buy the gear, they are, you know, ready to go, and then the phone just doesn't ring.
I've done that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you have to think about, so know your skills, do an inventory on your skills, decide, you know, and I think that decide that you want to sort of approach this as a business. Almost think of yourself as a corporation. And what do corporations do? Well, they do a market analysis and they talk to potential customers. So I would never start this business without first interviewing at least 20 people. And I would and that's like sort of like a standard, you know, business model canvas is what they call it. You know, people can Google that, the business model canvas, but do that exercise. Because if you do this and you look at interviewing like 20 potential real customers about what their pain is, maybe you'll find out that, you know what, they don't like their current photographer because that photographer is always late, and that photographer is too busy, or that photographer is not very nice to work with.
Yeah.
Or, you know, a lot of things, or that photographer has been doing it for so long, they just don't care anymore. And there's so many things that would give you an unfair advantage coming into your business if you spent the time to do a little bit of research ahead of time, rather than buying gear and then just being excited about it, like trying to monetize a hobby.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really important on this point is I've heard of less people complaining about the photography end, but more people saying, I want somebody easy to work with, who's adaptable, who I get along with, right?
Yeah.
So how you interact with other people is so important.
It's important. And again, this comes back to business, right? I mean, business is about establishing the value of your customer over the lifetime of having that customer. It's a little tricky in real estate because I think especially residential real estate folks are very conditioned to things being transactional. It's like, okay, I got to move from the stager comes in and we do all this work, and then, you know, it's so much stress. And then the stager comes in and then the photographer comes in, and then I need to quickly, as fast as possible, get this staging stuff out. I need to sell this as fast as possible because I need to move on to the next. It's an eat what you kill industry, right?
Yeah.
And so these realtors are like, they just want to spend as little as money as possible on you because you're, many of them, because you're coming in at the moment where they've spent everything, all the time, all the money, and you come in and you're like, okay, here's my $500 bill or here's my $1,000 bill, and that hurts because they haven't received their commissions yet. And many of the brokerages will sort of subsidize up to maybe $300 for photography, at least in the Bay Area. But for the rest of that, it's typically on the realtor to then pay the difference or to pay for photography.
Yeah.
And the realtor is, you know, sometimes they can get the seller to pay for stuff that they really want, or they'll split it with them. But we're usually talking about an out-of-pocket cost that does hurt that realtor, even if they see the value. So there's always going to be downward pressure on your price, unless you sort of, you know, unless you can come up with, I know there's a lot of people who have done other models like pay us when you sell, or for some of my really good clients, we'll have 30-day payment terms. But you have to establish you have to establish a relationship with them and think, okay, well, is this a person that is going to be bringing me one sale a year that I'm going to go shoot? Or is this going to be a person who's going to bring me 20? Is this a brokerage that can bring me 50 or 100? And I think that when you approach it that way and you think about what's that like year-long revenue potential from that client, you start thinking in a more strategic way. And I think that really helps you figure out who to waste time on, well, who not to waste time on,
exactly.
and who to actually really establish a great relationship with.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So you've decided you want to start. You've interviewed your 20 people.
Yes.
And then
I think this is a really good time. So then you should, obviously, like the next thing I would do is try to get some experience under your belt. And that is the thing that will help you feel more confident. Because it's not just knowing that there's people out there, but it's the confidence to say, I have the skills, I have the network, and I can go out and I can actually make a sale. But not only that, like my delivery of what I do is going to be up to the quality and the par that I want it to be. And I wish I had pulled it up, but I would love to have shown you my my very first shoot. Maybe I'll send it later, but I can't believe that somebody paid me money for this shoot. I look back at it now, and you know, and I also feel like that was one of the issues, was my confidence, not on the Matterport, because Matterport is pretty much like, you know, there's some standard of quality, even if you're terrible at it. But on the photography, let's talk just photography for a moment. You know, I did not know how to take bracketed shots. I didn't know anything. I was really not a photographer. And I look back now and I realized that you know, those shots were so bad, and my client was nice about it, you know, he was like, well, the photography's okay, you know, but he was kind of being nice about it. But you know, I charged at that time, I think maybe I charged $100 for the shoot, because I didn't even have the confidence that it was worth $100.
Aww.
Yeah, and I want to tell people that, because I feel like you have to kind of start somewhere. And then at a certain point, you know, I was like, you know what? Like, my time is valuable and my stuff has gotten better.
Yeah.
But it took a while. It took a couple years.
Oh, a couple years? Wow.
It took a couple years. Like, from in the very beginning with photography, because I was focused on Matterport.
Okay.
And so actually I wanted to show you, I brought my very first camera, so you could see like that I shot on a Rebel T5. And I brought this because it has a 10 to 18 lens. This is a crop sensor camera, which means that, you know, it's just sort of like this, you know, not super powerful camera. I think I bought this for $5.99. The lens was another $250. So I was $750 in on this thing, but I didn't really know how to use it. And then I realized later that it actually only shoots 3 brackets if you're doing auto bracketing. And yeah, and I was like, okay, well, you know what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna try my hardest to practice with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was great, because once I was able to kind of like bundle, that was another thing, Dee, is like, people they didn't want to buy just Matterport by itself.
Yeah.
They needed the photos.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that at the beginning. And so I kind of, if I was going to try to sell anybody Matterport, I needed to be able to do photography too, or I was dead in the water. So that's why I think that, you know, understanding what your market needs first, and understanding that it doesn't matter if they have a virtual tour possibility, 100% of them need photos.
Yes. Well, every listing has photos, right?
Every listing has photos. So your photo game is really where I think the skill, and this is another interesting point, is that the better you get at photography, the more you can charge. The better you get at Matterport, because of the technology getting easier to deploy and the more competition, and even Matterport, you know, getting in the game, the price comes down. So 5 years of experience with Matterport, or 6 years of experience with Matterport, I can tell you that the price has actually only gone down, whereas with photography, it's only gone up. So yeah. So anyway, but this, getting your hands on a camera that you can master to the point that you feel like you're ready to move to a bigger or more capable camera with more lenses, that's a skill that requires it requires dedication and time.
So I have a friend who was asked to do a real estate shoot, never done any photography in his life. He called a friend who was a photographer the night before and said, I have this camera. I don't even know how to use it. And he's become in a year like successful, and he's so busy, right? And making a lot of money, but a very good salesperson, right?
Yes.
So you can do it without any experience. And
you can do it.
2 weeks from now, I'll have the CEO of Box Brownie on, and he's going to be talking about how to take real estate photos with an iPhone.
Yeah, and I love Box Brownie. So Box Brownie came to San Francisco to Inman Connect like years ago, and I was it Brad? Is that his name? Yeah. So Brad, you know, great salesman, you know, great personality, very knowledgeable, and just really likable person, you know, and so I think that, you know, Box Brownie is, again, one of these ways, like Box Brownie and companies like them, they're great because they have an entire, you know, video catalog of videos you can watch to get better. And if there's something that you're not good at, but you can outsource to Box Brownie, or you can outsource to another video editing service, I can't tell you how many inbound emails I get from video editors or, you know, editing teams that they want the business, and they want to help you with they want to help you, you know, with all the stuff all the media that you're trying to create. So there are a lot of ways to make your media look better with the help of others.
I think that's a good point, because most of my photography friends send out their pictures for editing, right? Yeah, that's very common, right? So
It's super common, and I think that once you get to a certain volume, like say you have 3 shoots in a day, like probably one person can handle 3 shoots in a day, but you're not really going to be able to turn it around in 24 hours. You're not going to be able to spend all the time you want on all those photos. And in the beginning, another common thing that people do, and I even sometimes am still guilty of this now, Dee, is I'll overshoot. I'm like, well, there's going to be a good one in there, right? You know, I think that part of the mastery of photography, the photography business, is getting to the point where if it's a bad shot, you don't take it.
Interesting.
You know,
and knowing, you have to know that, right?
You have to know that. And so don't take the bad shot. You know, you can make that same metaphor and comparison for like my friends who are hunters, or my friends who are, you know, who do other kind of like archery or focus exercises. And I think it's exactly the same with photography, that knowing and having the confidence that it's going to be a good shot will help you not overshoot. And the more you overshoot, then that's more time on the back end that you can save.
Yes.
So it's easier for you to say deliver 40 shots to 3 clients, so 120 shots in a day, rather than walking away from your first shoot with 200 images, which I've totally done.
Yes. All right. So how do you get clients? What's the secret?
The secret sauce to getting clients is, I think, being, first of all, your first couple shoots are probably not going to be paid unless it's friends and family that are going to, you know, let you shoot someplace for them. But check your network and see if you have anybody who has a property that you can shoot, and start even with your own house. Just, you're going to need to build up a body of work to show people, and they're going to need to see your portfolio, because that's one of the ways that you establish credibility.
Okay.
And right.
But that means you have to clean your house.
Yeah, you clean your house. I never posted our house, but I've posted, you know, shot, like I'll tell you the way I got my first clients was, I knew there was my very first paid client, actually. So I shot for friends to get some nice houses that looked good so I could get some experience. I just jumped right in. But in order to get a paid client, I went after a realtor. I didn't go after him, but he was a dad at my kid's school who I knew was a realtor. And I called him up and I was like, hey, I met you, you know, I know that you are a dad at the school and you're a realtor. And I just want to let you know, like, I'm testing out this new technology, which was Matterport. So I do virtual tours, and, you know, can I come shoot this for you? Can I, if you have a shoot coming up, or a property coming up, a listing coming up, I'd love to shoot that for you. And I wrote him a proposal. And that is the thing, Dee, that a lot of people are, you know, they don't do. They don't write proposals, and they don't make cold calls.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so proposal writing and cold calling, cold emailing. This was a warm contact because I knew who he was. But he took a gamble on us and on me. And it was great, and it felt amazing and terrifying.
Yeah.
And and I'm shooting for him later this month. He's actually stuck with me for over 5 years.
Wow.
So that's when I say that customer lifetime value, it's like establishing that relationship with somebody in the beginning can help that person not be a $100 sale, but be a several thousand or tens of thousands of dollars sale over the lifetime of that customer.
Sure.
So yeah. So anyway, so that's how I did it, is I just sort of, I was like, look, you know, give me a shot. Let me try this. And I did that over and over and over again.
So being willing to put yourself out there and approach people is so important. Most of my photographer friends have a personality that's likable, and they'll approach somebody. So like, for example, Bill Robinson is an excellent salesperson. And I went to a meeting with him, and my husband said, did you notice that within 10 minutes, Bill had gone around the room and introduced himself to everybody in this room?
Yeah.
And
he's amazing.
See, so it's little things like that that make a difference.
Totally. It's a 100%. That's going to be the difference between you and somebody else. And I think, and that's a great example. I mean, in-person connection. I've walked into so many real estate offices. I've gotten email lists. I've joined associations.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to send blasts. I'm kind of bad at sending email blasts to my own mailing list. I like sending it. I do like doing that, but at the same time, like, I don't want to overwhelm people with email, but I think that, building up a database of who's in your market is part of that initial research.
Yes.
So when you find your 20 realtors, you decide also, like, should you go after commercial? Is there more commercial business in your area? Is there more residential business in the area? And also, commercial photography and architectural photography is very different than residential real estate photography. Different licensing, different pay scale. You usually are paid more for commercial.
Yep.
You usually won't have realtors changing things on you last minute because they're not as crazy with things just like needing to get to market today.
Yeah.
Buildings may, in fact, some office buildings may be vacant for months at a time.
Yep.
And so it's just a totally different animal. And so you have to think about the lifestyle that you want. Do you want to be on a realtor's schedule and sort of, that person that has to be flexible? Can you stay up until midnight working on photos if you need to make a deadline for your client?
Yeah.
Will you go that extra mile?
Yeah.
And before you have a team to sort of take over some of that, the post-production and the administration. And I think those are the questions you have to ask yourself. What do you have the bandwidth for? What kind of lifestyle do you want?
Yeah, I do think that's key. You have to be able and willing to put in some extra hours, at least at the beginning. Yeah. It's like thousands of hours. It's thousands of hours, and it's like, you have to be a little bit willing to become a bit obsessed, I think, with getting better at something. Yeah, but it's your baby. It's you. It's like it's something that you should be so proud of, right? That it's worth it. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're doing it more just like, if you have an easy way to get into, like, say your best friend is the marketing director for a big brokerage in your town. That's so lucky.
Yeah.
So awesome. And then maybe you'll just be the person that just gets all the business from that brokerage.
Yes.
And but if you want to go further than that, you have to think about how are you going to win not your first account, but your next account and the account after that.
Yes. So I know a lot of people who have wives, parents, siblings who are in real estate. So all you have to do if you're married is convince your spouse to become a real estate agent, and then you can become their photographer.
I mean, my husband is a musician, so I couldn't do that. But yes, you do have to convince your spouse to support your dream, I think, because otherwise it's like, but I like the idea of them becoming a broker.
But it does help to know somebody who's in that business, right? Whether it's a friend, a relative, whatever. And then I've also heard stories about people just going to brokerage firms to pitch their services.
Yeah, bagels and cream cheese.
Oh yeah, if you were trying to sell me something and you gave me a bagel, I would just definitely favor you. I'm so easily bought. But I've also heard like little gifts, like when COVID hit, one of the real photographers went out and bought little bottles of sanitizer, put it on a keychain and have a little cute note. Those things are important too.
There's a reason for it too, and it's a behavioral psychology thing, which is this like idea around reciprocity. So if I give you something, you will feel this sort of need to give me something in return. So what I've done in the past, and I think this is a really good way to to also help grow your business and your referral business, is I always give new business a discount. And I always give a discount to the person that referred me on their next service and on the person that they are that's coming to me. So they will always get, like, let's say the current offer is like get 50, give 50. So customer A is like, hey, I love you. I told my best friend about you. They're going to call you. I say, great. When they call me, they're going to get 50 off. So you can just let them know they'll get 50 off right away. And you're going to get 50 off for your next booking.
Oh, nice.
I give that every single time. It does not expire. It is unlimited. If my client A sends me 20 referrals, they're going to have, you know, a huge chunk of change they can use. Maybe they'll get free services, you know, and it'll just be like, there you go. Because people, they, you know, there's also like this, like in the real estate industry, there's like finder's fees and there's all this stuff. And it's like, it's commission based. So they're salespeople too. So incentivizing them to, like, you know, help you is a really good idea. So I think do that and, you know, see what happens when you start incentivizing people to use you and to talk about your services.
Yeah. I think in life in general, the more you give, the more you get.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah. It's true. And we're kind of conditioned for that. But I think that it's, so, you know, the proposal writing, I mentioned it before, but I just want to mention it again. I know for fact that, like, being able to write a nice proposal to somebody that shows that you took time will always be a better way to do it. You can do estimates in like QuickBooks, or you can write proposals, you know, in whatever system you're using for your accounting system. But I think, you know, just whatever you can do to show the person that, hey, like, I thought about you for more than 5 seconds.
So what, if somebody doesn't know how to do a proposal, what has to be in a proposal?
So what has to be in a proposal is a summary of the problem. You know, like an executive summary of what it is that you need done. So I always start with that. And then I go and I think of sort of the decision architecture around, you know, limiting the choices. So here's package A and here's package B, right? Or maybe here's package C. But if you go with package B, which is not the base package, but it's the middle package, you get all this stuff. It's exactly what we encounter, and we're so conditioned to see when we sign up for subscription services, when we go to the salon, wherever we go, you know, it's like, get this, and then you get these 3 things. And I, especially in the times of COVID, you know, I was like, you're going to need a virtual tour. You're going to probably need the Zillow virtual tour also, and you're going to need your stills. So at the very least, I need you to do 3 things. I need you to do stills, tour A, and tour B, right? And that's like, I recommend that package because also I would rather go out and sell. I would rather go to a place once and do 3 services rather than go to 3 places and do 1 service at each place.
Ah, yes, true. Yep.
So Dee, that would be one of the things that I do. Now, also in the proposal is going to be a timeline and like, you know, here's what length of period this covers. And then again, credibility. Here are the links to all the things that I've done. Here's links to examples of my work. If you don't have a bunch of those, this is where at least having 2, you know, your friend's house, your mom's house, whoever's house, go and shoot it. Go to the park. Go to shoot neighborhoods. You can get a ton of content that you can use for social media, for your website, and for getting business just by going around your local area. And then that can all be put into your proposal.
I don't think getting samples would be that hard, right? You just take your camera with you, and I mean, there's just stuff everywhere. Everywhere you go, right?
Yeah. There's stuff everywhere you go. Now, I want to also remind people that it's a small business in America, right? Like, so it has seasonality. And unless you're like your rock star friend who has just like tons of business right out of the gates, which is awesome, there's going to be like, you're going to need to have some kind of perseverance. You have to be somebody who can take no for an answer and be okay with that. That's really good life training.
Well, that's part of sales, right? So you have to be you have to do sales. So if you're not good at sales, maybe this isn't the right thing for you.
Yeah, or you can get better at it by pushing yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that it's tricky because people who are behind the camera and who want to be a photographer, sometimes, they do that job so that they don't have to have interaction with people. They're like, oh, look, I'll just be behind the camera and I don't have to talk to people. Those are people that make great second photographers, assistant photographers, but they are not going to be running the business.
Yes.
So if that is not your strength, find somebody who has that skill set, who loves business development, and you can pay to go do that for you.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've done everything from, doing all of that myself to then hiring people to do outreach for me and to do lead generation. And I've literally done everything that you can imagine. But, for sure, somebody has to do sales.
Yes.
And that can be the internet working for you, doing sales for you with Google AdWords and Google search. But when they come through your sales funnel, you still have to be able to guide them and tell them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all those steps along the way that help somebody make that decision to go with you versus somebody else.
Yes. Okay. And then there's all the social media too that I've heard, like you can use Twitter but that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, it's a whole other topic. And actually, I think that Instagram is really great. I don't necessarily advocate that people spend more time online, but because it can get a little bit it can suck your time away. But I think Instagram for our local community is a really great way to quickly get connected to all of the people in the area, even more than Facebook now.
Yeah. All right. So I think the important points here are: do your homework, look around what's in your area, because it will vary depending on where you are geographically. Yeah. Look and do some deep thinking and introspective thinking about what type of personality do I have? What am I good at? What do I want to do? What do I have passion? Because it's not for everybody. No. When you're doing sports, you have to have a certain body type for certain sports. So this is you have to have the right personality, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have to invest a little bit now in some kind of equipment. So there's some capital that you need up front.
Yeah. The iPhone can get you started on a lot of stuff. And that could already get you doing practicing on 90% of the stuff. But yeah, you're going to need to invest in some gear at some point to really get going.
So you have to be brave. You have to throw yourself out there. But you can do it. Okay. So I've decided I have the personality, I have the gear, this is the right market where I live. Now, how do I know how to price my product?
Okay, this is such a good question. So you have to think about, what does the market see? So the market is your audience. That could be your commercial real estate clients. That could be your residential clients. And I'm going to tell you right now that pricing, it really depends on what is sort of the maximum people are willing to pay in your area. And it's a little bit I always think of it a little bit like a hotel suite, where it's you go to the door and you look at it and it's $500 for this room, and you're but I paid $200. Mm-hmm. It's there's people out there at peak season who are going to be willing to pay $500, because there's supply and demand. But you have the ability to negotiate, and it's always important to set the expectation that your product is worth a lot, that it's worth more. Mm-hmm. And people like to be able to feel like they got a good deal.
Yes.
And so I have seen prices around the country really range, and this is where I wanted to also mention that there's a lot of new, more national companies. I think they're Snapper and Pineapple and all these different companies that they're their business model is to be the Uber for photography.
Yeah.
You can go onto those websites. You can go onto Matterport's website and try to book capture services right now and find out what Matterport is charging in your market by booking your own photography for Matterport. So I know exactly what Capture Services is charging for the same thing I charge, right?
Okay.
I can, because I was like, oh, look, I'm going to see what it costs to be a customer of Matterport's. So as long as you have that low end, and then you have an idea of what you think your services are worth on top of that because of your knowledge or your friendliness or your white glove service. All of that adds to the premium that people should be willing to pay for you.
Yes.
And so the lowest common denominator, like this like low bar, is going to be those national providers of services like Pineapple and Snapper and stuff. So if they're paying you, like here, I think it's like, I've done the research, so it's like, was like 75, let's say it's $75 for you to go out to go get like the raw images, right? Okay, well, you have to think, is that going to be more than what I would make if I went and did this myself and I took out all my expenses, and then after everything else and the cost of acquiring that client, you know, is that about the same? And I still think that it's better for you to do it yourself and to build your own business. But what does Snapper then charge on top of your services as a, you know, and that you're just getting a portion of that, like Uber? So say it's $150. I'm just going to use numbers that I think are average in the US. So say it's $150 for that shoot. Now you have to think, is that worth my time? You know, and then the answer often will be like, no, it's not worth my time to go do a shoot for $150 for the one service, which is why I really believe in the bundling and the upselling of services, because it is so much more beneficial for you to spend another 30 minutes on site or another hour on site and to double or triple the revenue you bring in from that shoot. So in case you thought, you know, you'd like go for 150, but what if I go for 450? What if I can go to that same, what if I can spend my day, you know, instead charging $12.50 for all the services for a much larger property? So, you know, once you have an idea of what the scale is for just those like standard services like photography and whatnot, you're going to need to make a rate card. So, and the rate card will be the thing that you just send out to people. That's your rate sheet of prices, and you share that with everyone. So you can do that on Excel. It can be simple. It can be on a Word document or pages, or, you know, it can be super simple. But I think having a rate sheet that sets the negotiation point of where we start, and then we may end up somewhere else, but at least that I have a rate card that will help people, you know, that's the way to do it. So you got to make a nice rate card. So
you can look on the internet and look for other people in your area. And I've seen a lot of different like ways of presenting pricing, the rate card as you call it, and come up with that. And like you said, you can like book services through Matterport to see what they're charging. So there's a lot of different resources out there, right?
You can totally do that. I believe you can even discuss pricing on the Matterport user groups on Facebook. I think people are willing to talk about what they charge, and maybe there's somebody in your area or near you that has their prices online. So it's out there for you to see. And, you know, but I think that, again, where you're going to differentiate your business is on all of the different things that you can do to say, well, hey, you know, everybody else does this, but we also do this. Like we can make, you know, whatever it is, like we can do virtual staging, or we can do, you know, that's where Box Brownie and these other companies come in, because they allow you to offer a greater range of services, even though you haven't expanded your team.
So be flexible. Know that pricing will depend on where you are located geographically. A huge difference, right? Because here in the Bay Area, houses are way more expensive than maybe somewhere in the Midwest. So,
that's right.
You know, realtors here pay a lot of money for photography.
They do. Yeah. So that's the other thing is that, you know, I think coming from the Bay Area, you know, I'm used to being able to sort of start at a minimum that's higher than a lot of places. But the cost of living here is also a lot higher. Do you have any ideas about like people around the country and like different, I don't know, you've seen and you've worked with so many photographers, and talked to so many people. Like, what do you think people are like, what do you think that they are like, maybe like the obstacles for them starting a business, like that you've seen?
So the biggest one is the mistake that I made is setting everything up and then sitting there and waiting for the phone to ring. That's not going to happen. You have to go out and sell. And and like you said, you have to be willing to take no, but that's okay. It's not a personal thing. Just keep going, right? You have to think of different ways to sell yourself. I have friends who are so likable, which is probably why they're my friends, but that charge a premium and people pay, right?
That's right.
They're nice to work with. They're flexible. Like, you're going to get asked to do some crazy stuff, and if you are just like, sure, no problem, right? That differentiates you from, say, if you don't like to sell, then you should, work for a bigger company. But when you hire a bigger company, you don't know who you're going to get. It's like they're just coming out. They don't care. They don't want to help you. They're just going to do the bare minimum. So you can sell the fact that you're going to give white glove service, right? Just if the passion and the caring comes out, it's so important, right? And that's something that's hard to find nowadays. Like, somebody who will go the extra mile, or who just cares about you.
No, and I think, Dee, that's why when, we first started working together, when you were at Matterport, it's like, that's why everybody in the Matterport community loved you so much and still loves you and is still watching this show, is because they know that you cared so much, right? So,
absolutely.
Like, your caring, it says volumes and speaks volumes about, who you are as a person, and like, are you going to be somebody that they can rely on? And that's the thing, is like, in photography, there is this trust element where you need to be able to say to somebody like, hey, it's an artistic product, but like, so you have to be good at the artistic product, but I need you to be able to deliver on like all of these other things. Like, I need to have the confidence that it's going to be ready tomorrow, and that, like, that if something goes wrong, like, you'll be able to troubleshoot it, or that you're going to be responsible and carry insurance and have a business license, and, do safety checks, or, just like all of these things, that it's a lot to think about. But the more capable you are of, like, I think leaving that impression on somebody, those are worth so much to people nowadays.
It's the little things. It's like showing up on time, showing up professional, looking professional. I mean, you don't have to dress in a suit, but not insulting the customer, right? Willing to go above and beyond. And the real estate agent is so busy that they just want to call you and say, be there. And they just want to know you're going to get it done, right? Delivering the product within a certain time period where that you promised is huge. Like, so little things, right? But if you care about people, you'll do that, right? It's just part of caring.
Yeah, it's huge. And doing what you say you're going to do, that should be a mantra. That should just always be a mantra. And it's funny because I've seen folks at the beginning of their business that also, they try to be everything. And I think that that's also a recipe for failure, because you need to know your limitations and not overpromise.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's why I think it's really good to get a kind of older, or get a camera that you don't know, like, get something like that'll give you the chance to like master something and then move on. But that's my style. Like, I know a lot of people like to just sort of jump right in and be like, I do video, I do twilights, I do this, I do that. And you can probably wing it, but are they going to call you a second time if they had the feeling that you were just winging it? Unless you tell them like, hey, I'm still figuring this out. I think that kind of honesty is really important. Yes. But I've seen amateur drone photographers, that's one of those things where, like, we don't even think about going out without a Part 107 pilot FAA approval. And I'm so glad that we do. One time we ended up in some airspace that somebody got really upset about, but we had all documentation, we had our insurance, we had FAA clearance, and they had no leg to stand on because we were we were absolutely authorized to use that airspace. Maybe they didn't want us to be in that airspace, but there's regulations that you have to be familiar with.
Yes.
And so I think people make a huge mistake and are potentially damaging their reputation if they go out and they try to do things without really thinking through, hey, what are the consequences if this goes wrong? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
So, so that would be like a really bad thing to do for a new business. So I think just sort of like, growing in an organic way that allows you to get the experience, but maybe where you're not over promising in the beginning. It's so tricky to say, but I think that's also a really important thing as an entrepreneur.
So I agree with that. So Amazon is a great example of that. They started out selling books and books only, right? They got really good at that, and then they expanded, and look where they are now. Yeah. I worked at Google, and we were working on a product, and it failed, and we did a deep dive later on, and we determined that the reason why it failed was because we tried to do too much at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So yes, so if you're starting out, just do the photography. It's okay to then contract out drone videos or contract out a virtual tour, right?
Yes.
So
yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So start small. Don't try and go out and get buy a drone and get your license and learn how to fly it all at once. Grow that little by little, just like you did, right?
Yeah, I think you're right, Dee. And there's a reason that these sayings that we hear all the time are so true. It's like jack of all trades, master of none, or don't boil the ocean, or, those things really in a real estate photography business are so true. And I know people who are wildly successful who do just photography and they don't do virtual tours at all. I don't have a pilot's license because I haven't had time to get a pilot's license, but I have 3 pilots that I have available, and one is on staff and 2 are contractors, and but they have to keep that credential up every 2 years. They have to carry the insurance, and they have to be flying regularly to not get rusty.
Yep.
And if I was not flying regularly, I would probably get rusty, which would be a bigger liability to my company.
Yep.
So those are absolutely the things where it's like, I did millions of square feet of Matterport, over the last few years, right? So I've scanned so many square feet of Matterport that, now I just know it inside and out, right? Or photographs. Like I've taken, I don't know how many, probably millions of photos too, or hundreds of thousands, I don't know, taken so many. But again, it's like anything you want to be good at, you just have to, I think, practice it and have, and there's really no reason. Like we had this day why you shouldn't do it. Like even the day do you remember the day where last year, maybe it was October, where the sky turned orange?
Yes.
Everybody will remember this day for the rest of their lives. But in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, Northern California, all the way to Oregon, I think the sky was like orange.
Yeah.
And we had a shoot that day scheduled. We were supposed to do a virtual tour, and they had left the skylights open in the office building. So ash had descended down onto the table, so it looked like it was midnight outside. We got to the shoot and there was ash all over the giant black table. There was no way we were going to be able to shoot because they'd left it open, and it looked just like midnight. And so that meant that like our reflection was going to show up on the glass from the inside, and all the things that you would never want in a shoot, like we had to stop the shoot. But I was like, okay, so the photographer and I, we left. But what did I do? I'm a photographer. So I went down to the marina and I was like, hey, I've got a charged camera. I've got a little bit of time to kill. Like, I'm going to go and just shoot this craziness.
Yeah.
And that was really, really fun for me. And so, but I think it's like that, I love these idiomatic expressions. It's like making lemonade out of lemons, but that's what you have to do, is you have to be able to kind of roll with it. And your day may not go as planned. The sky may look like it's falling. It may literally be falling, but yeah, you can turn it into something
absolutely
like a learning experience.
Absolutely. I think too that a lot of people, once they start taking pictures, just love it. and will carry their camera with them and just take pictures of everything in their lives that they see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. It was really hard to be in, like I was just in Tahoe, and I was like, and there was an evening where it was like lightning and a little bit of light rain, and we were all like, whoa, we were at the beach, but there was actually a double rainbow. And so, I was so stoked because I was like, oh, I'm going to take a bunch of photos. I'm going to take so many photos of this. And like, yeah, like things like that just sort of, you also, and people, I think anyone that becomes a real estate photographer, they do have this thing that they develop, which is like, I pay such close attention to the sky right now. Like me and the sky are like this. Like, I know what the sky is like right now. I know, like, I'm like, you're like a weatherman, Like, okay, at 1 o'clock, the fog's going to burn off, and then we're going to do this. So actually, I've had my staff tell me that they have actually appreciated that, not only becoming better at their craft, but developing sort of an attunement with nature.
Yes, yeah.
And the time of day and the time of year, the light, the condition of the light, and that these become these things that you develop over time. And I think that that's actually really it's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing to experience like a day that way.
Yeah. But to become a photographer for real estate, it's a little bit easier because, number one, there's no moving parts. Like if you're shooting a wedding, there's moving things and you have to get the shot at the right moment, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard it's way more like scientific than art, right? So there's different, like you can learn what angles and all that. You can learn the science behind it, like lines and stuff like that. Yes. And it's not like somebody's there watching you necessarily. So you can do this by yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great thing. Like when people ask me, I had to shoot my daughter's softball, like team, because they weren't doing team photos this year because of COVID. And I was like, oh, but I have to tell you, Dee, I had to go on YouTube and research, like, how do I shoot teams?
Yeah.
How do I shoot people? Because I have no idea how to deal with moving parts and kids, and I shoot only things that don't move, right? And so that was like, oh my God, I have to be a real photographer now for humans. Oh God, the stress.
Yeah, and a team is hard because you want to get everybody looking good, which is pretty much impossible. Yeah,
but I was super proud of myself later because then I was able to, like, a couple girls couldn't make it, so I was able to like Photoshop them into it. Yeah, and I was like, oh look, and like there will have a space here for her, and then a space here for her. So I was glad I was able to fix it. But it was intense.
Well, and nowadays too, you don't have to shoot with film and then have it developed, right? It's instant. You can see what the picture is instantly. Yeah. And you can take as many as you want, right? So
it's freeing. It's so funny. I got a Polaroid camera. It's over here on the shelf. I got a Polaroid for my birthday from my kids. And now it's like going back in time where I'm like, oh, I really want to take a good picture with the Polaroid because that film is expensive. And I only get the one shot. But yeah, no, for sure. Film and digital have changed.
It's so different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's changed everything. So then there's no real cost other than maybe a little wear and tear on your gear to taking additional shots, to practicing more. So again, I'd sort of just come back to, don't be afraid to do a lot, to like try a lot. And then we kind of hit on this earlier in another conversation, but having your work critiqued by other people, it's really helpful. So, show your work to some other friends or colleagues and have them critique it. Or
absolutely.
Send it into an editing service that'll cost you $1, to merge some images or something. And actually just like ask them, how can I improve my photography for the next one? Like, what would you do? Can you give me some tips? Let me know what I can do to get better at this. And then you'll get answers, because some of those technical things, like, people will come back to you and go, you know what? Like, your exposures were too high. You didn't have a large enough range. So we don't even have the data to pull in the nice views from out the window. You need to drop your exposure down to, -4 and -5 sometimes. And, you might not know that as when you're first starting out.
I've never met a photographer, if you ask them for like to critique your work, who's not been willing to do that. In fact, I think you'll find that you'll get way more information than you want.
Totally, you will. You'll get way more information than you want, and hopefully, hopefully asking for that feedback is sort of like a way of building rapport with somebody. I think that it's a good way to get somebody's respect is to be like, hey, like, what do you think about this?
Yeah. Just remember though, with real estate photography, the level that is expected is not as high as like photography for art. Remember, there's a lot of real estate agents out there now that are taking their own pictures. Okay.
Yeah.
And if they're willing to be at that level, then that's the level you have to meet. Me as a normal person who's not a photographer, I look at real estate photography. I don't know the difference. I think it all looks nice, right?
Yeah.
So you're not creating fine art. So it's not that hard. It's just, yeah. I mean, even if you have a real estate agent that takes their own photos, you could go to them and you could say, look, that's the time you spend, and your time's worth money. I can do it for you, right? Mm-hmm. And you could and a lot of times I've seen people do that. Real estate agents go, you know what? I hate doing this. Just do it for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they will. They will want to do it. I've had also the opposite where I've had realtors who will come to the shoot with a camera, even though they hired us, and then they'll be like, "I'm a photographer too," and you're like, well, "Then why am I here?" Yeah. But actually, they just want to geek out with you, and that's really the bottom line. Is like they just want to geek out about like, oh, what lens are you using, and oh, I love Canon too, and, and tell me about. But usually where you can get them is that they won't really know too much about virtual tours. Like people will be. For sure, they'll have a camera, or they have a camera that they got from a parent, or they had since high school, and they love it, and they love taking old, photos on those old devices that still work. But a lot of the newer technology, like iGuide or Matterport or 360 cameras, and sort of any of the scanning laser scanners, like all of that is like a whole level of knowledge that is so different.
Yes.
So, the photography part for sure, you can, really easily figure out what and if there's a brokerage in your area that has a style guide like Compass, if you're shooting for a Compass realtor, just reach out to their marketing team and say, hey, can I get the Compass style guide? Or can I get the style guide of, your marketing team? I'd like to make sure that, we deliver something within your specs. They'll send that to you, and then you'll have over time like a few different style guides that can help you figure out like what different teams are looking for.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So, even though it's like, the bar is pretty low on some stuff, like definitely on multifamily and commercial, bar is super low, but you can really stand out by, I think, inquiring about what's the best possible delivery like that I can give you, even if your bar is low.
Yeah. I guess the point I'm trying to make is don't be afraid. You can do it. And then when you get better at photography, you can add like the 3D tours, and you don't have to do Matterport. So you could do like a Zillow 3D virtual tour, right? Zillow's
I love the Zillow
free.
3D tours.
You invest in the little Theta camera. You just have to be good at running in and out of rooms. But other than that, it's quick. It's free. The customer gets an advantage because they get bumped up on the listing where they're listed. So, I mean, if you add that and real estate agents don't know how to do that, then there you go, right?
I know. I could do a whole hour on Zillow photography. We're like Zillow elite photographers, and we are beta testers for their floor plans, and so all of those things are Yeah, the Zillow tours. I'm a huge fan of the Zillow tours. I think that also Zillow is doing it right and doing it in combination with a marketing platform, which they already have. And so I'm excited about. Yeah, I'm excited for people to try it. And I think if they want to reach out, I did, for example, a realtor. I like, it's like the teach a man to fish thing, like don't give him a fish. So I had come in and helped to assist assist a realtor who had a Matterport photographer do a model, shoot a model for them and transfer it to their account. But then that realtor was like still needed the highlight reel and was really not sure how to do it. And so I actually not only did I help them with the highlight reel, but I also did a one-on-one coaching session through the Matterport workshop.
Wow.
And so, if people really need that one-on-one coaching, like, I've done it in the past. I will do it for people that I like or that I feel like, would be able to do it themselves if they just had a little bit of training. But, I've trained a lot of people, and I think that anybody can do it. You just have to kind of be willing to put in the time and learn new skills, which is good for your brain anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're running a little bit out of time here.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh my gosh.
But this has been an interesting discussion. I hope everybody watching has learned something. I certainly have. We've gotten a lot of great tips from you. So if you are thinking about starting a photography business and a virtual tour business for real estate, don't be scared. Do your homework.
Yeah.
But definitely do it if you think that it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody, it can, I think that's true for men, for women, for, people who are younger in their 20s who are starting, or, I think that it's, if you're interested in it, the only way to figure out if it's for you or not is to try.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you've learned a lot. I certainly have. I will see you again in 2 weeks where we will have the CEO of Box Brownie joining us. So until then, please stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.